Coming of Age in the Andes, An Adventure into the Mountains of South America by Matthew Schroeder. Dedication to Maki Spark, a brother, a friend, a hero, an eagle flying high in the endless big blue sky. Acknowledgements. Many special people played important parts in the creation of this book, and I am eternally indebted to them. To my mum Leslie, who has loved me unconditionally all my life and instilled in me a sense of awe, wonder, and adventure. To my stepdad Chris, who inspired me to go on this incredible journey through South America. Thank you both for the long discussions, edits, and ruminations on this book. To my dad Kevin, who has always had my back and never hesitated to jump on a plane when I really needed him. To my steppy Les, who helped pay for my education and is the most persistent problem solver anyone could wish for. Thank you both for all your love and encouragement. To Wanda Carter, who so kindly gave of her time and energy to help me in nitty-gritty post-draft editing stages over email and Skype. Her experience, insight, and wisdom made such a difference to the final version of Coming of Age in the Andes. To all my friends, my family, and followers of my blog Adventures at the World's Edge, thank you so much for supporting my journeys around the world and being interested in what I have to write about. Likes, comments, shares, and reposts keep me going, but seeing you all venture out in your own way is a far greater inspiration. Adventure, awareness, aliveness. Part 1. Africa. Never look back unless you're planning to go that way. David Henry Thoreau. I guess the pictures of faraway places my mum stuck above my cot turned me a little curious about our planet, and a childhood spent under the African sky in the late 80s, wandering the battlefields, mountains, and savannas of KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, also played their part, with my younger brother Mark always in tow. Our days were spent swimming, fishing, and rafting rivers, hiking, camping, and exploring sea, sand, and sky that bordered our isolated farm cottage. In a world before cell phones, internet, and TV, our nights were often lit by lantern and books, were read by torchlight under the cover of blankets deep into the chilly early morning hours. As a boy, I got to do some intrepid things and see some spectacular places. Mark and I were hiking up mountains before we were riding bicycles. My mother perched her camera on a rickety gate and set the timer to capture a picture of the three of us on our way up Majuba Hill, where the grass was taller than 2-year-old Mark. Before entering our teenage years, we'd been on 4x4 cross-country trips to Namibia, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Swaziland, Lesotho, and South Africa. The story of our lives reads like a photo's travel guide of Southern Africa. The Fish River Canyon, the Kalahari Desert, Victoria Falls, Lake Kariba, the Drakensberg Mountains, Shihlui-Mfolozi National Park, the St. Lucia Wetlands, Golden Gate. We were urged on with the expectation that there would always be something special just over the next rise, and we were seldom disappointed. With our beat-up Toyota Hilux kitted with a rooftop tent, our weekends and vacations were generally spent at off-the-beaten-track campsites. When it was really hot, we slept outside or in open-air caves. Sweaty days, bumping along through dusty, scorching expanses, would wind down with roaring fires, flame-cooked food, puppet shows, stories, and stars. The road was always taken slowly. We deliberately stopped along the way to indulge in the endless natural luxuries that Southern Africa offers. We swam under waterfalls and looked for precious stones in crystal-clear rivers, threw starfish back into the ocean along the desolate west coast, and cast nylon lines into icy water. In national reserves, we went on sunset game drives to witness lion, buffalo, elephant, wildebeest, rhino, warthog, hippo, and kudu converging slothfully or skittishly at waterholes for a drink or dinner. I was lucky enough to grow up in what seemed, on the surface, to be an uncomplicated world. We learned how to make fires with magnesium flint and set up camp in the dark, pathfind in the bush, tie knots and mend clothes with a needle and thread. And most of all, we learned to appreciate the serenity of the great outdoors and the thrill of exploration. I fear these things are slowly slipping away, forgotten in walled cities and digital dimensions. Where do the children play? Those trips fostered in me a genuine love of nature and adventure. I spent many nights lying on my back, gazing awestruck at the stars, pondering life's big questions. These early cross-country journeys inspired a thirst for exploration and inquisitiveness, which, when school ended, would see me throwing on a backpack and venturing out alone into the mountains of South America, juiced up on wanderlust and lured by the mystery of the unknown. It was an awesome time to be a kid. Just be a kid. The Drakensberg, the Dragon Mountains, snaking the border of Lesotho, the highest country in the world by average altitude after Tibet, was our favorite playground. Here jagged rock peaks jut out from verdant valleys in dramatic fashion, carving zigzagging patterns in the sky and rising over 3,000 meters above sea level. The mountain range is also a treasure trove of San Bushman paintings. Several thousand exist here, etched indelibly in clandestine caves and rock shelters, paying homage to the animal spirits, the eland, praying mantis, and baboon, guardians of earthly and supernatural realms. But sojourns off the beaten track in the wild were juxtaposed with an extremely tumultuous time in South Africa. The country was in a state of emergency. The nationalist government's grim half-century apartheid regime was crumbling under the force of resistance movements in every province. Nelson Mandela had recently been released from Robben Island and would serve a few more years on the mainland before walking free from iron bars and mobilizing tens of millions of people to vote for the first democratically elected Republic of South Africa in the April of 1994. The social fabric was diversifying rapidly, and at the age of 6, my first year at school saw the inauguration of mixed-race classrooms. Incredible times in an incredibly beautiful country. I got to experience the country a little closer when during high school I went on several community service trips to the rural Transkei in the Eastern Cape. Here, under the wise, patient tutelage of my geography teacher, Mr. Zukulu, we learned how to build mud brick houses and plant trees. We also organized sports competitions on dusty fields, gave English and mathematics classes at local schools, skills and subjects which seemed to pale in significance in comparison to the cultural and geographical richness we had encountered on the red hills and aloe-strewn rivers of a land forgotten by time. We galloped on horseback along seldom visited beaches and waded waist-deep through rivers to arrive at concealed campsites where fire, music, and traditional fare always greeted us. This was education. This was experience. This was learning not only about the world around you, but about others and about yourself. Things you weren't tested on, but that tested who you were as a person. On these kinds of trips, I learned so much more than sitting in front of a blackboard, jittery about the next exam. Later, the sense would take me to the startling peaks of the Andes after I finished high school. This adventure, the subject of the book, was sparked when my mum Leslie met an otherworldly American man. Chris was a builder contractor living in Hawaii during the winter and spotting fish as a bush pilot in Alaska during the summer. Cutting a long story short, a book in its own right, tentatively titled by them as Parachuting Naked, they fell in love and we flew across the planet to Honolulu for a wedding bedecked in golden sunlight, colorful flowers, and countless smiles. Life is not a job, it's an experience, Chris always told me. He emphasized widening the breadth of your experience and expanding your perspective of what it means to be alive. I figured he was onto something, and so my exploration down different paths have been intensified, following my own white rabbit to see where it would lead, and it seemed to be leading west. I cruised through high school, not really knowing exactly what to do with my life. Travel, go on adventures, write, and study, most likely. During my final year, I read some great books on mountaineering. Chris had turned me onto the subject. He has a knack for doing that. In his youth, he'd climbed in Alaska, Ecuador, and Peru, doing some pretty radical solo and paired climbing, unguided and in alpine style. The daring, heroic tales of climbing legends like Wimper, Mallory, Hillary, Norgay, and Messner really gripped me, fueling the desire to venture to the highest reaches of the planet. I knew I wanted to travel the following year. Definitely. Where, I wasn't sure. It had to be somewhere different, somewhere mysterious, somewhere far away, somewhere totally new, where challenging experiences beckoned. A place where I could broaden my worldview, somewhere to come of age as an independent wayfarer in this vast, inexplicable thing we call life. Curious to hear more about Chris's climbing stories, I was treated during many evenings around the dinner table to intriguing accounts of his adventures, mostly set against times and places in South America. It was largely due to his influence that this really became the only place to go. The Andes, the longest chain of mountains in the world. What a trip. Climbing, real adventure, wandering down unknown roads with a tent and stove, and camping in the wild, hitchhiking, getting lost in nature, learning a foreign language, meeting people who think, speak, and act in ways different to what I had been exposed to growing up in South Africa, exploring the cultures and pristine landscapes of the Andes solo, with my life on my back. While I had already traveled to Canada and Hawaii during high school, the earth still felt incredibly immense, and I knew the only way to get some inkling of its vastness was to get out and encounter it firsthand. I wanted to experience rugged adventure on the strength of my own savvy and determination, and to evolve as a citizen of this world. It was time to push out of my comfort zone and fill that bag of experience with stories of sand from unexplored shores. Looking back on the idea now, it was actually damn insane. Traveling to a completely foreign place alone at 19 without any experience of climbing or of being in alpine landscapes, planning somehow to conquer some big scary mountains. Yet it was the craziness of it, the far out factor, the opportunity to go deeper and farther, that irreversibly hooked me to the idea of adventure high up in the Andes. Chris sponsored some climbing gear, a 50-meter rope, 2 harnesses, 2 figure of 8s, and 2 carabiners. The first thing he taught me was how to prusik, a technique used to support a climber up or down a rope in emergency situations where your life can literally depend on the method. In the months leading up to departure for South America, I practiced prusiking for a few hours every day, until doing it with my eyes closed was a piece of cake. The big adventure was looming, the excitement growing day by day. Fortunately, I already had one foot in the door. Thomas, my stepmom's maverick eldest brother, had a hacienda in Patagonia. Not too shabby. Soon it was arranged that I'd fly to Buenos Aires and then bus across Argentina to meet Thomas at his farm in the bucolic village of El Bolson. This would be home for the first 2 months of the trip. From there, the idea was to journey down into Patagonian Argentina, and then up through Chile to the Bolivian and Peruvian Andes, and maybe even farther north to Ecuador. I had the whole year to play with, so I kept an open stance on which route to take and how long to spend in each place. The only absolute must was climbing mountains. Which ones didn't really matter. What they would come to represent was the key. The uncertainty was captivating. No schedules, no deadlines, no responsibilities. This was a rare chance to get to know myself better, to challenge myself in uncharted areas, and to be the intrepid traveler I'd always dreamt of from a young age. On the night before flying to Buenos Aires, my best friends came over for a goodbye celebration. Sleeping was impossible, and I remember trying to squeeze everything into my backpack in a zombie state just a few hours before the sun came up on the 20th of January, 2005.